What up, TCK Potters? Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, Sky Guasco. This is another episode of the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast, aka TCK Pod. Rolling solo today. Bob's going to be rolling solo this evening as well. We had two episodes we wanted to bring you, and we kind of wanted to give our own flavor to some of the free agent re-signings. We've talked a lot about the play on the move, players that have left their former squads from last year, new one this year. We have a long episode. If you haven't caught it last night, it's available on the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast, anywhere podcast heard on Believe Networks. You can also catch that in all videos right here. Fantasy Focus and Twitter as well. It's going to be a quick hitter. I'm going to do a solo episode. Bob's going to do a solo episode this evening as well. Tune back around 9:30 p.m. Eastern time this evening for Bob's version of this same exact episode with another 5+ players. I have 5 players for you that I'm going to break down, which are my favorite re-signings. Now, let's be careful here. Resign and re-sign, very different concepts. Resigning are players that have retired, okay? Re-signing, players that re-signed with their squad, okay? So a guy like came back, right? Extended was Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Those are some of the bigger names. I'm not going to talk about those guys because everyone talks about those guys. And obviously, those are massive keeps for the Packers and the Buccaneers. But I'm going to talk about auxiliary players and some players might have some really nice fantasy drafts this coming August. All right. Once again, if you haven't hit the subscribe button right here on the YouTube below, let me know who your favorite players that stayed with their current team. So they were re-signed. They did not move on. They had their squad maybe battling for them, but they stuck to their guns and re-signed with the same team. And also make sure that you follow us on the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast. Subscribe there as well. All right, quick hitter. Let's get right into it. My first player, and again, I have a number of these players, but first guy I'm going to talk about is a player I've been really hyped on for broke out a few years ago, finally came back and started blowing up. Mike Williams, I thought was him to leave the Los Angeles Chargers, but in fact, they surprising. So instead of leaving, Mike Williams comes back. He's the clear number 2, I think, behind Keenan Allen as far as Justin Herbert's first look. But in fantasy football, because of the touch Mike Williams presents as well, he could be better than Keenan Allen in fantasy football. They both ended 12-13, depending on your format last year. Mike Williams had a career year across the board. Very impressive. Again, just a couple years ago, he had 1,000 yards, touchdowns. He had 10 touchdowns as a rookie. Comes back, which you love. He's had a tough time staying healthy. He played all but one game last year. Targets. I love that. 76 catches, 1,146 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Good in PPR. Now, his average per reception down last year, which is surprising. He had 20 yards per reception 2 years ago and 15.8 last year. It was down to 15. He's a big play machine, but they didn't need him. But I love Mike Williams to to duplicate what he did last year. So he's going to be a wide receiver. I'm probably going to have around, it's going to be hard to rank him at number 13, right? Because there's so many juggernauts up there. I'll probably have him ranked at about 15, 16, maybe 17, depending on, how things shake out over the offseason. But he is a guy that has touchdowns again. If he remains at that, 1,200 yard mark and he gets 80, 90 catches now that he has another year of rapport with Herbert, he could absolutely be a top 10 wide receiver. So Mike Williams is the first guy that I'm hyped on that came back to the Chargers. I thought he was going to leave. I thought he would go get paid, be the true number 1 somewhere else. He did not. Remains with the Chargers. They've had some great defensive gets as well. They bolstered that offensive line. They are my early Super Bowl. I'm talking about in Super Bowl. We'll see. Rams and Chargers. Move on here. My next player is Michael Gallup. Dallas Cowboys. So Michael Gallup, again, one of my favorite players in the league for a handful of years. He's had a tough time staying healthy. Finally played 16 last year, 100 targets back-to-back years. He had over 1,000 yards 2 years ago. Wide receiver 17 in 2019. This year, he only played half the season. I've talked a lot about him this offseason already. Just 9 games played, 62 targets, only 35 catches, 400 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's a wash. He got injured, tore his ACL late in the season. Assuming he comes back healthy, I like him a lot. Number one, the Cowboys brought him back. Okay, paid him big money. Cedric Wilson, gone. They've been kind of vying for that number 3 option for a couple years with the Cowboys. He's gone. Amari Cooper, gone now with the Browns, right? Zeke Elliott, when he was in his prime a couple years ago in 2019, Michael Gallup as the number 2 before CeeDee Lamb showed up behind Amari Cooper was number 17 wide receiver in PPR. All right, now it's just CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb is probably the prototypical number 1, and he's going to be more healthy coming into the season. But the Cowboys trust Michael Gallup. They gave him a lot of money. They want him to be the at least 1B in that offense. Zeke is not Zeke anymore. I like Tony Pollard like everybody else, but look out for Michael Gallup to take a huge step this year. And again, if he can get up into that 120 target range, 1,200 plus yards and 6-8 touchdowns, he's going to be top 15 potentially also in this offense and has the ability to maybe leapfrog CeeDee Lamb. If he plays a whole season, if he comes slow out of the gate, obviously that'll hurt him. But the Dallas Cowboys led the NFL last year in pass attempts, and they were tops in points scored. 30 points scored per game for the Dallas Cowboys. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. Love Michael Gallup returning to Dallas. All right, next up, I'm going to bring up Mikasichi. Now, I'm not a huge fan necessarily of Mikasichi in general. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of Tua necessarily, but they bring in Teddy Bridgewater from free agency. So either way with the quarterback, I don't love the big play, big arm, hucking it downfield consistently. I think that actually helps Sicky. Also, something you may not be thinking about, but you need to this time of year is coaching changes, right? Mike McDaniel, my boy from the San Francisco 49ers, comes over to the Miami Dolphins. He's been coaching under Shanahan for years. What do? Utilize the tight end. Now, Mike Gesicki can't block for shit compared to George Kittle, okay? That's going to be a problem. But he is close to as athletic. Big body in the red zone, has big play potential, and if they hyper-target him and Jalen Waddle over the middle, I think that will keep the chains moving for the Miami Dolphins. That is Tua's game, not deep shots. So I do think Mike Gesicki is a nice fit here with Mike McDaniel. Last year, Mike Gesicki had career highs in targets, catches, and yardage, but he only scored 2 touchdowns. Only 4 games all season long that he had over 15 fantasy points as a tight end. I think that's less about him. He did have some drop issues late in the season, but I think that was the offense last year. Didn't know if they could commit to the run, commit to the pass, not having confidence fully into it last year as well. I think that was an issue. So we have full Tua out of the gate, Teddy backing him up. Mike Gesicki is going to be, I think, the lead guy in that offense. They brought him back. He could have walked him, brought him back, and tagged him. So that is a good move for Miami. It's a good move for Mike Gesicki. Him and Jalen Waddle, I think, are going to lead this offense. My boy Raheem Mostert now in that offense. Hopefully he keeps the ball moving. And then you still have Parker and, of course, some deeper threats there. So I know that I'm in fantasy as far as drafting him, because you're probably going to get a lot of hype and have to draft him in, I don't know, like the 6th or 7th round for your like middle tier tight ends. If that happens, there's no chance. If he falls to say the 10th to 12th to 14th round and he's like the 9th or 10th tight end, then you're looking at potential value. So keep an eye on Mike. All right, let's move on down the list here. We'll talk about our first quarterback, and that is Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, I've actually, I've for fantasy football and for the Minnesota Vikings, right? So I think the biggest thing here is Bob and I talk about it all the time, and it'll be clutch for my next guy too. It's going to be continuity, right? Now, it's not continuity with the coaches, right? They get rid of Mike Zimmer, basically a new head coach, and they bring in a new offensive coordinator, which I think is a great move. Wes Phillips comes in to be the offensive coordinator. O'Connell is the head coach now, brings in Wes Phillips, the former offensive coordinator underneath the Rams. He's got some of that Sean McVay dust, right? Also, Wes Phillips is the son of Wade Phillips, the iconic, probably Hall of Fame defensive coordinator, defensive mastermind in the NFL forever, who is the son of Bum Phillips, who for you, new kids on the block might not know. Bum Phillips was an original OG with the Oilers back in the day before they became the Titans. So the blood lineage and the football mind with this cat is fantastic. So he was a quarterback in college, played at UTEP, so he has that quarterback. Kirk Cousins, absolutely, again, offensive coordinator, helps tremendously, likes the pass game. Another year of Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook staying healthy, but Alexander Madison's there as well. The rotating tight end situation's, I think, going to be fine. And I like KJ Osborne taking another step, as well as that third option. So Kirk Cousins has already been a top 10, top 12 quarterback in most formats for the last 3 to 5 years consistently. He's not flashy, right? He doesn't have consistent super high numbers all the time, top tier stuff, but he does have a couple 400-yard games every year. He does have a couple 4 touchdown yard games. He doesn't take a ton of sacks. He doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. He makes big plays and he has big playmakers. So Kirk Cousins is the quarterback that I'm most excited about to return to their team outside of course, Brady and Rodgers. All right. And finally, I can't have an episode this long into the offseason without talking about my boy, James White. Look, James White, there's nothing new to say. We all know who James White is, what he is to the Patriots. But after getting injured last year and them having a complete retool, bringing in 7 weapons on the offense and a rookie quarterback and the post Brady effect and all that shit, for James White to get hurt early and miss most of the season, him to come back, I think is golden for him as an opportunity, but also for fantasy. I think this is a great opportunity for Mac Jones to dump it down. He has a trusty, reliable veteran, great clubhouse guy. The franchise loves him, of course. He's been there for all the most of the Brady years, Super Bowls, all that. So he has that veteran pedigree that can help a young team and a team with a ton of new weapons with the Patriots. So I love James White coming back. We know that, they're going to have, James White is kind of still just like that third down back, but they use him on the goal line. He's not a very big back, but they've used him on the goal line because they trust him. He never fumbles. He catches everything. In PPR, I think he can be a great kind of, second tier, in PPR leagues. He's not what he was in 2017, 18, when he was the running back 7 or whatever. But I do think that he's going to be a reliable pass catching back. I would rather, have him over like, say, JD McKissick, right? Some of these other pass catching backs. I'm going to take the reliable James White. We know that Bill Belichick trusts him. And, Josh McDaniel's gone now to the Raiders, but whoever comes in, it's going to be a point of emphasis to use James White. They like him in pass protection. They trust him on the goal line. James White is my man. And now I think you can get him at very, 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 very good value, super cheap and late in drafts. All right, y'all, just a quick one for me today. Once again, breaking it down to you, the free agency. These are my best re-signings. So the players that have re-signed that I'm most excited about, once again, Mike Williams, Mikasichi, Michael Gallup, Kirk Cousins, and James White as well. Tune back this evening and catch Bob giving you his top 5 players that have re-signed with their teams as well. And we'll be back with you next week for another slot of episodes. If you have not yet, make sure to subscribe and smash that button here for the bell so you don't miss any alerts right here on the Fantasy Focused YouTube channel, available on Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter as well. And also leave a comment below letting us know your favorite players returning to their squad this year. Make sure to follow us on the Believe Networks, anywhere podcasts are heard, the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast. And of course, this episode and all episodes are brought to you by the Believe Networks and BetOnline AG, your online sports betting experts. I'm your host, Sky Guasco. Quick one for me. Come back tonight at about 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Bob will be with you with his top 5 free agent re-signed players. We're bringing you all the best news as soon as we get it. We'll catch you next time. I'm your host, Sky Guasco, and I am out of here.